Welcome back to Worst Seats in the House. Michael Russo and Anthony LaPanta back from Salt Lake City, where we had a really nice time. We'll talk about that in a little bit as well. December 17th, which is that Monday? I think it's Monday.
Could be.
Let's double check that because we want to get that wrong. According to my calendar, it's Tuesday.
Okay.
Tuesday, as I was saying.
Night. Perfect.
Isn't there a game Tuesday?
Next week?
Yeah.
No.
There's
a game Wednesday.
There we go. Oh, how do I not know that? Florida comes to town.
Florida Panthers. I think you used to cover the Panthers.
Yep. Monday is a big day in my life. Joe Smith comes back to work, so I'm super excited about that.
Joe Smith, I'm not familiar.
Yeah, Joe Smith, my colleague from The Athletic, has been on paternity leave since June, basically. So he is coming back, so super excited.
Has he seen a game, do you think, this year?
He seems to have stopped paying attention, except for his own podcast. But so he's coming back. So you'll see a lot more Joe Smith stories in The Athletic, which means better writing. But December 17th is our next live show, Tuesday night, apparently, at 7 p.m. at Splitrocks. So come on down for that. Anthony, I can't hear out of my right ear, so this might be good for me, this podcast, because I won't hear your thoughts.
Right. I'll make sure I sit on the other side.
Yeah. I literally can't hear out of my right ear. And when I say literally, because I know literally is like literally your pet peeve when people misuse literally, right. I cannot hear out of my right ear. That
pop-up was literally a mile high.
It was, I've not kidding. I've been like just under the weather for a week, and these flights.
It has been a grueling week for you.
These flights, Anthony, you have been on vacation since Saturday. Okay, Saturday. I'm sitting there. Like you're in Vegas, then you show up in Salt Lake City. You're not even on the air, but there you are.
I was working
across the rink, and then I send you a nice text to say, Anthony, hey, in this makeshift press box that they have at the Delta Center, we literally can't see the benches, so I cannot pay attention or I will not notice if a Wild player is hurt. So can you every now and then count the bench and let me know if anybody's missing? And you can't even just nicely reply. You have to give me all these ultimatums of what needs to be done for you to tell me if a Wild player is hurt.
I replied almost instantly.
You did, but with a bunch of stressful things that made me upset. So
I offered you a deal and said, I'll do it as long as you do this. And you never responded.
I know.
You didn't even respond to say, no, I won't take the deal.
Because when you
the deal's ridiculous.
Yeah, because when you were texting me, I was actually downstairs. So I missed the final 5 minutes of the first period and then all of the first intermission, which would explain my lack of tweeting at the time, because I was actually downstairs talking to the president.
You weren't tweeting at the time.
Yeah, I bet. But I was meeting up with Chris Armstrong, the president of the Utah Hockey Club, for a bunch of stories I'm writing next week. So let's talk about our trip to Salt Lake City. I've been there before. Actually, 20 years ago, I covered a Utah Jazz Miami Heat game in that same arena. It's hard to believe that is the same arena because they've done such a magnificent job renovating it, both downstairs and the inner part of the arena. You would think it's a brand new arena. In 2017, they renovated it. They're going to have to do a ton more renovations. That'll be what my story is with Chris Armstrong and also Bill Armstrong, their GM next week, not related. And just what they have plans there. There's 5,000 seats in that arena that have obstructed views. They get between 14 and 16,000 a game, but they only announce sold out attendance of 11,000 because they don't announce the unobstructed or the obstructed. But over the next 3 summers, they are going to renovate the heck out of this place, build out the arena, and turn it into this state-of-the-art hockey facility, which, as we both know, needs to be done because it's not built for hockey now.
It's not, but the facilities, the locker rooms, and everything are great,
amazing,
and some of the.
Like
I had a chance.
Did you go in the Arizona room?
I did.
Gorgeous.
Utah room.
Yeah, Utah.
I did, and I had a chance just to walk around the rink because I wasn't doing the game. So prior to face-off, I walked around. I was working hard, actually. I had my trip was. You would have lost your mind on my trip because I mean, you thought you're like. Flights with no ear pops.
I had a 6-hour flight delay in LA, and it took every ounce of energy me for not to bitch and moan about it on Twitter.
So mine was planes, trains, and automobiles, not like because of any disasters or inconveniences, but just the way I pieced it together. to come home. And we had the game in Anaheim, bus to LA after the game in LA. I rented a car and drove to Vegas so that I could meet Vinny for a day, which coming up later in this show, he's got a proposal for his input in our show called Vinny's Thoughts. So we'll get to that a little bit later on. Spent the day Sunday in Vegas after driving for 4 hours the night before. So I pretty short night of sleep there to make sure that, we got up, spent the day together Sunday. Then I had a 6 a.m. flight to Utah because I wanted to get there before the team practiced because I was hard at work to get prep work done. And it actually, in all seriousness, I was talking to Margot about this a little bit. The way our days work right now with when John Hines wants to do our broadcaster meeting and everything, it's really limited the amount of time I get to spend in the Wild room and talk to some of the players. Because by the time we're done with our broadcaster meeting, which he's great, and the meetings are typically longer than they've been with any of our previous coaches, by that time, most of the players are gone. So in Utah, I had a chance to sit down and chat with a bunch of guys that I've only had passing conversations by the bus or in the hotel lobby or whatever. It truly was a day where I was able to get a lot of work done there. But, early morning before sunup flight from Vegas to Utah to make sure I got there. And,
yeah, like a sports writer. I feel for you.
Yeah.
Never taken a 6 a.m. flight before.
Right. Yeah. It was perfect. But I drove 4 hours the night before to get from LA to Vegas. So it was an interesting trip. It was fun. It was worth it. I hadn't been to Salt Lake City since 1999. I stopped there with the Twins when their AAA club was the Salt Lake Buzz. And I mean, this is still bizarre to me as I think about the way we travel now. We had played in Tampa against the Rays, had a day off, and the next game was in Seattle. And we flew on the team charter on the off day and stopped in Salt Lake on the way to watch the Buzz play. And
like
then
the entire team?
The entire team.
Wow.
And Terry Ryan was the GM at the time, and the rest of his staff was there. They wanted to stop and watch the AAA club play. So can you imagine now having the entire team get out? And so we got there, let's say, an hour before the first pitch. So I wandered around Salt Lake City for an hour, but that's all. It was 25 years ago. I had zero memory of the town. I kind of like the downtown. It's a little sleepy, clean, but really
safe,
quiet.
Yeah.
Eerily quiet.
Yeah.
Somebody
especially
asked me,
Sunday night, by the way. You weren't there Sunday night, but you could barely find a place open because the mall was closed.
It was weird because that was exactly what I was going to say is everything was open. It was just quiet.
Yeah.
And I was trying to put a finger on what it is that makes it so quiet. And the part of it, there's no background noise. Yeah. There's no din of traffic. There's no freeways nearby or anything where you're hearing the hum of traffic. I don't think I heard a car horn in 2 days. You walk in New York or Chicago or Boston, all you hear is nonstop. I didn't hear one person honk their horn. There's so little vehicle traffic, and it was an eerily quiet town, but I liked it. The people were great. They were polite. They were all happy to see us from Minnesota.
I loved my time there. So I was there in 2005. I went up to Park City during the lockout, and then I also covered the Jazz Heat game. And I'm telling you, I loved the downtown. I love the new arena. I think that they're going to do an incredible job on the renovations. I think the color scheme of the team is great.
I like their uniforms.
Their Jumbotron's unbelievable. You got an owner that, I love the fact that he doesn't put on a suit and things like that. He was sitting there yesterday, sitting next to the Jazz forward, Lauri Markkanen, who's a former hockey player. And so, I think they're doing a great job. Their home locker room's unbelievable. The visiting locker room you'd never know that this was just built in a day, essentially. What they have done to essentially move Arizona there overnight is truly remarkable.
Well, I've heard a lot of stories about how well taken care of the people that made the move with the team, what they did. And I don't want to get into any of the specifics because I may get them wrong and it's probably private information, but the way they helped with moving costs and moving your life there to help you make that transition as seamless as possible, which, as you and I both know, the people that were in Arizona dealing with the ups and downs of, are we getting a rink? Are we staying? Are we moving? Are we playing in a college rink again? All of that stuff. Another referendum coming. You think about the roller coaster ride they've been on for the last 8 years, probably. So I think it was a great gesture on the ownership's part in Utah to say, we're going to make sure you guys are taken care of, and this move is as easy as it can be.
And everything these guys, and not just the players, but, staff that they need, he says yes to. They built out the oval there and turned it into a 1-year practice facility there with their offices. They're building, he buys a shopping center for like $111 million in Sandy, Utah. And they're going to, by winter of next year, going to have a state-of-the-art practice facility that's also going to be offices. Their hope is after they renovate this arena that they're going to have the 2034 Olympic Games actually in there. The Olympics are going back there, but they actually have the hockey in that building. But it's going to be a 2 or 3 year phases. They're going to take one. It's really neat. So the one end zone, which I looked at, I remember at practice Monday, I'm like, how are they ever going to turn that into like at several bowls? They're actually going to turn it into one giant like stream of seats going up 50 rows to the top.
Yeah, but it's collapsible or expandable for basketball. Yeah. I was talking to somebody about it because right now the reason they have to fold the seats up is because they're built to come out to the edge of a basketball court. So now they're going to rebuild them and make them so that it changes the angle slightly so that they can be longer to get to the basketball court. It's fascinating.
And then the
technology.
other seat, all those like because they're not going to have boxes and all the cool bells and whistles on that one end zone. They're going to put that on the other end zone. And so it's just going to be really neat, what they're going to do. The Jumbotron's unreal. So I like
the atmosphere in the building. Yeah. The crowd was into the game.
The crowd was into the game. They were definitely hockey fans because, man, were they getting restless there at times in that game, which, it was pretty neat to see. And then the game was Wild. I mean, truly, Wild have an unbelievable shot, differential for a while, somehow fall down 1-0. Then it felt like Utah was starting to take over there in the second period. And then out of nowhere, miscommunication between Kesselring and Sergachev. Kesselring decides to go for a line change. Sergachev throws it to where he thought he'd be, and boom, right to Khusnutdinov, who needed something good to happen offensively, gets the breakaway goal. 30 seconds later, John Hines makes a switch, puts Marcus Johansson on that line. Johansson pushes it up. They fight through a fence off at the blue line, and Kaprizov makes it 2-1. And then their PK rears its ugly head. But in between, the second time he puts Johansson with Kaprizov after Boldy's in the box for the first Keller goal, Johansson scores, and then it's Johansson, Rossi, and Kaprizov the rest of the way.
I've loved that line together. I know you and I have talked about it. I think the team is better when those three are together and Boldy and Kaprizov are separated.
Don't you think, especially now, has little offensive depth in there?
Exactly. But that's what we talked about as soon as Eriksson Ek got hurt. And I said, if it were me, and really it was when Zuccarello got hurt. And I said, if it were me, I would split those guys up. I believe what he's going to do is throw Ek between those two. And I said right then that I liked it better I've loved Johansson with Kaprizov and Rossi. I think Johansson's speed becomes such a factor on that line. When he scored the second goal last night, that line second goal, they had played 2 minutes and 37 seconds together at that point, and had scored 2 goals.
Yep. Both their shifts. And then from that point on, they were together. And then I don't want to rip on the refs, but the go-ahead goal, I mean, my God, there were like 17 penalties on that play that weren't called.
The hand over the puck at the blue line was crazy to me.
I was talking to Steve Levy on the phone today, and I didn't watch the broadcast because I was in the arena, but Steve told me on the broadcast that Dave Jackson, who's usually very friendly to the refs, basically said that was missed call. And
I didn't see the replay either because I wasn't watching the broadcast. But when I saw it, I thought, well, number one, it could have been blown down for a hand pass.
Right.
But number two, it sure looked to me like he covered the puck.
Yeah.
And
unfortunately, what fans didn't realize is on the hand pass thing, that has to be in the offensive zone to be challengeable.
It has to not to be called, but to be challenged.
Right.
Because I talked to the Wild coaches last night, and I said, now, you couldn't have challenged that, could you? And they were like, no, we couldn't challenge it because it crossed zones.
Right.
But it still should have been blown dead.
Do you remember the play in Jersey like 3 years ago where the league actually screwed it up and allowed a challenge when the play was in the neutral zone on a high stick? and they disallowed a goal, then they had to come out with it was a Wild Devils game in Prudential Center.
Oh, I do remember that.
And then the NHL
puck was
had
played with a high stick,
right,
and
then it was somehow challenged. They overturned the call, and then the league had to put out a thing like, that was not challenged.
They shouldn't have been able to.
It could only happen in the offensive zone where you're challenging what should have been a stoppage,
a missed stoppage. Yep. And that's which is true, but it still doesn't change the fact that they missed the stoppage.
Yep.
It should have been a hand pass and could have been a penalty for the covering the puck with your hand.
It was crazy. And then, but then the Wild, I mean, again, Marco Rossi out there with the with the extra attacker, and Marcus Johansson finds him after a great play by Matt Boldy. Forward, for some reason on Utah, was not covering the seam pass. I have no idea what he was doing.
Wild had about 5 good looks. Kaprizov missed the net on one. Spurgeon missed the net on one. And it had a little feel like it was, wow, how many looks are you going to get? Mm-hmm. And they just kept getting another one. And when Kaprizov missed the net on the one from the flank, I just had this feeling like that might have been their last good look. And then all of a sudden, there's Rossi all alone in the slot. And as he's been doing so often this year, when he gets opportunities, he's taken advantage of them, whether it be as a passer or a finisher, and makes the big play there. And Wilder get their point into overtime and wind up a 2-1 trip.
Yeah, the replay of the Rossi goal too is so cool. Like you could actually, because he's got Foligno in front of him, he's got the defenseman in front of him, and you could see him look down, pick his spot to figure out a lane to shoot through all that mayhem. It's pretty impressive what Marco is doing right now and what the team continues to do without Eriksson, Ekbrodin, and Zuccarello. To go 2-1 on this trip after really getting, to me, the short shrift in LA. You and I, I was talking to John Hines about this, and I think you were there when we were talking about it. Like, I don't understand why the Wild don't do more of this. The LA Kings at the Crypto.com arena on a Saturday night had a 5 p.m. game for no other reason than to make it a disadvantage for the Wild because they were playing the night before.
Because they have to, it has to be 22 hours.
Right. Like there's no reason that you would not have a 7 p.m. game at Staples Center. But they did that. And here, when the Wild go to Winnipeg again next month, Winnipeg's going to do it again to the Wild where they have an earlier game. And the Wild have to start doing that to other teams. Like, even the night before, like the Wild play a 7 p.m. home game. There is no reason that game should be at 7 p.m. The Wild should move that. When they saw that game was earlier than normal in Winnipeg, they needed to move that game up. Like the Wild are going to sell out that game anyway. Like
play at 1.
Yes. Like so the Wild need to start doing a much better job of trying to get better advantages for themselves.
To me, it's still, I'm just befuddled why the NHL doesn't stand in and just say, you know what, unless you have a reason to play that game at a different time. Like, let's say the LA Rams were playing at 7:00 that night and you wanted to play at 5. I understand it. But if it's not something like that, or maybe your team's leaving after the game to go fly somewhere and you want to play at 5 so you can get in the air and get wherever you're headed next. Mm-hmm. If you don't have a tangible reason, then the game should be played at 7:00. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't make any sense to me why the teams that have to play at 7:30 because of traffic or whatever, like San Jose always plays at 7:30. And when the Wild are leaving San Jose to go somewhere else, it puts you a half hour later. Even in those spots, I've always wondered, well, why doesn't the league say the Wild are traveling after the game to play somebody else tomorrow night? You have to play that game at 7:00.
Yeah.
We'll let you play at 7:30 the rest of the year. But when you got a team that's playing in Vegas the next night, that game has to be at 7.
Right. So for them to, we knew that like that goal at the last minute of the first period in LA was just a dagger because first of all, you never want to fall behind against LA because they just, for 20 years, they figure out a way to shut it down. But it was just such a nothing play, no pressure giveaway. And next thing you know, it's 1-0. And then they just, obviously just, they were just off. They worked their butt off, but it's just off,
off, tired, shorthanded, and against the Kings team that seems to have their number.
Yep.
At least this year. The two
for many years.
Probably
every time, to me, it's the same game every time we go to LA. Like the
Wild I agree.
Very rarely play well.
But
there.
it's this year. I can't think of. I know the Philly game they gave up 7, but that was as dominant as they've played maybe all
The
season
Wild got
through 2
goalie
periods.
by their own goalie.
Right. And the 2 LA games are probably the 2 clunkers that they've had. And the game here was, I don't think it was as one-sided as the final score.
Yeah, like the Wild, the first 15, 20 minutes.
They
really,
were good.
Yeah.
But LA's a handful for them. The way they play, the way they're built, it's not an easy matchup. And then you throw in that it was Wild run back-to-backs. Kings hadn't played in 4 days or 3 days. And the Wild are short-handed well right anyway. Now. And yeah, it was. Yeah. And the Kings, they took it to them. But even that, they won the game 4-1. It was 2 empty net goals. So it isn't like it was a blowout. It was a 2-goal game for most of the night. And you're going to have those along the way. I just think that to me is what has separated the Wild this year from other years, is that then it didn't lead to another tough night in Utah. They found a way to win in Utah, rather than, let's say they lose that game 4-3, you get on a plane having lost 2 out of 3 on the trip, coming home for a difficult Edmonton game, shorthanded. Instead, it's just respond within the game, respond from game to game. That's what they've done all year.
No doubt about it. When we come back, I want to talk to you about Trenin and Khusnutdinov scoring their first goals, and I want to talk to you about the Wild's penalty kill. Then we'll get to Vinny's thoughts. We'll be right back. As you know, Aquarius Home Services is the longest sponsor of Worst Seats in the House, but I don't endorse anything unless I absolutely love it and use it. And for 5 years, I've been a customer of Aquarius Home Services for all my plumbing, heating and cooling, and electrical needs. Plus, I have the Connecticut water treatment system. As winter approaches, their dedication to keeping my furnace running smoothly brings peace of mind, especially as much as I travel during the winter months. What sets Aquarius apart is their commitment as a local family-owned business. They prioritize their customers with transparency, upfront pricing, and respect for your home and time. I highly recommend Aquarius. Trust me, you will not be disappointed. Reach them at AquariusHomeservices.com. Aquarius, earning the right to be recommended. Don't forget to mention that Russo sent you.
We love supporting local businesses. We love working with local businesses. I started buying stuff at Twill in the Edina Galleria a long time ago. When I started this podcast network, I was really hoping I'd be able to work with Scott Dayton, the founder and owner of Twill, and I was lucky enough to be able to do so. Now my closet is pretty much all Twill stuff. I don't get free stuff. I don't get discounts. I don't ask for discounts. I go there and pay full freight because I want to support a local business also because the stuff is awesome. Just bought a fresh batch. I'm about to go on a vacation with my wife. Everything I'm packing is Twill stuff because it wears well. It's comfortable. It doesn't wrinkle on planes. It doesn't wrinkle in suitcases. It comes out looking good. It wears like iron, and I'm never going to have to replace it. It's just so simple. Everything from casual shoes to dressy shoes to golf stuff to dress stuff to suits. By the way, you get everything tailor fit, which really helps me out. And everything from, gopher stuff to winter stuff to summer stuff. They just have everything. So go to twillmn.com, sign up for email updates. They won't send you anything unless they have a very specific event they want you to know about. They won't spam you. And go in there and say hello. Tell them we sent you. It's just a pleasant group of knowledgeable people. They are experts at what they do. It's the best men's clothing store in Minnesota. Go check out Twill online and in person in the Edina Galleria.
Back here, Worst Seats in the House, Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta. The coolest part of this trip for me, Anthony, was watching Khusnutdinov and Trenin score their first goals and the reaction from the teammates. Trenin gets the shorthanded empty net goal in Anaheim. The bench goes crazy. Kaprizov's, raising his arms on the bench. Rossi gives him the water bottle shower in the locker room. Kaprizov gives him the hard shame, the victory shame. And then the same thing in Khusnutdinov's goal and breakaway goal, same thing. Trenin goes and gives the hard chain to him. Bench goes crazy. It's pretty neat. And I think it's, look, as Bogosian said to me the other day, winning creates good cultures and good atmospheres. But there's a tightness to this team based on a lot of what we've seen here the first 2.5 months where they just keep on winning that has made them a super tight team, probably being on the road as much as they have as well.
I think the road's a little bit. I think the success is more. And I think it's indicative, though. We talked about Jake Middleton's post-game interview last week on the show where I loved the way he started it with just stick together, dude. And when
you go after our top guys, we'll go after yours.
And those two comments were, that's a team that is tight. And yes, I think it's a team that recognizes how important the depth guys have been this year. They know why this team's different. It's because their third and fourth lines are built differently than they were a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And Yakov Trenin's been a big part of that. So has Marat Khusnutdinov, even though they haven't wound up on the score sheet. Those guys know. When the penalty kill had that one run where they went 19 out of 20, Trenin's a big part of that. He disrupted so many zone entries. Khusnutdinov was a big part of that. And so I think, the guys, they're excited for him when they finally get on the score sheet, don't have to answer the question anymore. You know what a player's psyche's like when every day he sees the stat sheet and there's a donut in the goal column.
Absolutely.
This just makes you feel better.
Yeah, when your goalie has one more than you, that's usually a problem 25 games into the season. Their penalty kill has continued to be a problem. I mean, obviously they had the one good stretch, but I think, look, with all due respect, that was the aberration.
Well,
they have been lousy for 2 years in a playoff round.
They had that run, and it was not long after that both Eriksson Ek and Brodin leave the lineup. And there were a couple games there where they were in, but it was, even in those games, they were 2 for 3 on the kill, where it was, gave up a goal, but they didn't give up the second one that could have changed the game. Jonas Brodin plays more shorthanded minutes than anybody on this team. Eriksson Ek is number one among forwards. That's a huge loss. Not to mention that it's Eriksson Ek taking the first face-off on most of these kills. So I'd say it's a little bit different than just being a nonstop spiral backward. I really thought they were trending the right way, and these two guys getting knocked out of the lineup. And remember, Lauko was out for a big part of that stretch too. He's also been a part of the kill. So you've lost 3 significant pieces of your kill simultaneously. I don't disagree with the fact that it's a problem and they have to figure this out, because
you're not going to win a playoff round like this.
You can't. Yeah. And you can't count on winning 5-4 games because you gave up 2 power play goals.
Yeah.
And I think it's great that they found a way to do it, but it's not the recipe for long-term success. But I wouldn't judge it until get all those guys back, and then if it continues this way, because I really thought they were starting to head in the right direction, not just with results, but also with the eye test. They had the 19 out of 20. Then I think it was 3 games in a row where they were 2 for 3 on the kill. And that was with these guys still playing. And they were so good on entries, so good on disrupting entries, that they were really making it hard on people. It wasn't just giving up a ton of shots, ton of chances, and getting great goaltending. It was, I thought their kill was looking like it was trending the right way. Now it looks like a mess again. And I know John Hines just keeps talking about the fact that he said it's one little miss here or there. Well, this is too far into the season now.
No,
to continue to be making those
it's the
mistakes.
same personnel, and they're making the same mistakes. One change I'd like to see is a little more Jared Spurgeon out there. I get it. They're trying to protect him, all that stuff. But Zach Bogosian's been on the ice for 8 of the last 10 power play goals against. John Merrill was out there for both last night. There just comes a point where you gotta just change it up. And I'm not saying that I'm not sitting there watching video and trying to is it Bogosian's fault? Is it Bogosian's fault on every one? But the numbers are the numbers. He's been out there for 8 of the last 10. It's time to throw Spurgeon back out there.
Yeah, the only problem is right now Spurgeon's running the top power play, and that's a lot of minutes now for where Spurgeon is so good at even strength, so important for you.
Although they don't draw a lot of penalties.
They don't, but I'm just saying that he is an invaluable part of this, especially without Brodin, where he's playing with Declan Chisholm. You just can't have him worn down at the end of a kill, because then who are you going to throw out there?
Well, you got Faber and Chisholm. I'm just saying, if there's the time where all of a sudden you kill a penalty, but then you draw a power play right away, at least you have 2 other point guys on the team that you could just say, all right, we're going to use that guy on this one
right, but I'm talking more even strength.
Yeah.
So you get done with a kill. If you're going to lean on him as heavily as you are at even strength right now without Brodin, because, look, Declan Chisholm is progressing. I think he's going to be a fine player, but Chisholm, Bogosian, Merrill those guys, you have to limit those 3 guys. So if Middleton and Faber are your top pair and Spurgeon is necessary now to play with one of those guys, it's just hard to ask him to go out, kill a penalty for a minute, and then be ready to go at even strength as soon as that power plays over.
And they are trying to manage him. And hey, as long as Jared Spurgeon's in the lineup, that is the most important thing. And if you got to keep him off the penalty kill, but you're keeping him healthy and he's playing as well as he is right now, it makes a lot of sense, because they cannot afford to lose They can't afford with Brodin in a lineup to lose Faber, Middleton, or Spurgeon right now.
No
How
doubt.
about Jake Middleton's season right now?
He's really been.
He was unreal in Utah.
I thought he was. He made a couple mistakes, but the two most glaring mistakes he made, he recovered in time.
I know
to make
exactly
a play.
the plays you're talking about.
And I remember when he made the mistake thinking like, and all of a sudden his skating ability allowed him to recover and defend. And I think that's one of the things that this year has been most different. He's leading the league right now in plus minus. And you can't do that if you can't move and you can't skate. I think everybody talked about and loved his role as a leader, his role as a physical player. The San Jose guys were befuddled, were absolutely confused, baffled why San Jose made the trade they did to get rid of him, when they said, if you're trying to rebuild, this is the exact kind of guy around whom you'd like to build. And I don't know, they traded him for a backup goaltender, turned out to be not even good enough to be a backup goaltender. But I think now when you watch him more, his skating and his offensive instincts are underrated. He has more of that in his game than I ever thought.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right, you want to bring up this new segment?
Yeah, so Vinny, who's been with us before and an astute Wild fan, never misses the show, he has proposed a segment in the show to be Vinny's Thoughts, where he's going to throw a couple thoughts at us to trigger some conversation. So now we talked about our recent trip. Vinny's first thought is, Russo is supposedly the biggest Vegas supporter, and he skipped out on meeting us in Vegas. What a joke.
Well, somebody didn't tell me they were going to Vegas. Who do you think that was, Vinny?
I might have mentioned it.
After I booked my trip.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're going to say I got to take responsibility for that.
Yeah.
It was funny.
Yeah, it was just like he didn't meet me in the lobby at the Calgary Marriott.
So we show up to leave for our trip, and this is, what would it have been, Thursday that we flew to Anaheim to start the trip. And our plane was delayed because a pilot was sick, so they had to make some arrangements. And we're sitting in the lobby just waiting for the plane to arrive, and all of a sudden somebody comes over to me and said, "Hey, you're going to Vegas after the game in LA?" And I really hadn't talked to anybody else about what my plans were. They were all making their own plans. Some were flying home on a red eye. Some were flying the next morning. And our producer, Rigatoni Ricky, comes over and he said, "I'm going to Vegas from LA. I'm flying the next morning." So it turns out he's there. Then we go out to dinner in Anaheim with our whole TV crew and our former producer, John Stroh, who's now overseeing the broadcast of the Stars and the Ducks. And we're sitting at dinner and he said, "Well, I'm going to Vegas tomorrow." So none of us had talked to each other, and all three of us were in Vegas, and Vinny was coming to meet me. So we sat and watched football together on Sunday. It was
Again,
great.
You're bad at communication.
Right.
You should have known all this stuff.
So this one, I don't know why he phrases it this way.
Margo, would you agree? Just say that out loud.
He says this.
Margo told me this great story when I walked in here about how she was so excited that she decorated this entire house for Christmas for you to be so excited about when you walk in at 4 a.m. yesterday, and then didn't say anything to her.
Well, it was 4 a.m. She was sleeping.
But even this morning,
I did actually. That's a little. I didn't react as well as she wanted me to, but this is the second year in a row she surprised me with this. Last year she had Christmas lights hung on our house when I got home from a trip.
Wow,
that was
she like up on a ladder?
No, she hired somebody to do it.
Oh,
but
okay.
This time there was one night on this trip where I can't remember why, I was trying to get a hold of him at home, and Gianni was at our house just staying here, and I remember thinking, well, that's weird that. Why would Gianni be staying at our house on a random Wednesday night or Monday night or whatever night it was? But then when I walked in, it actually was a heartwarming moment. She had decorated everything. The Christmas tree was up with the lights on, and it was cool.
Cool.
All right. So I don't know why back to Vinny's thoughts. Question from at MWombat1719. I don't know why he phrases it that way. Why does Russo feel the need to continue to tell us how long he's been writing in the NHL? Like, buddy, we get it. That's why we follow you.
All right, Vinny.
I think, he's kind of complimentary. Like, that's why he follows you. He trusts he respects your history.
Some people don't know.
You really think there's anybody around that
these Wild fans on Twitter that think they know everything,
but they just randomly follow you?
Have you noticed the one thing? Like, have you noticed still the unbelievable negativity with some fans out there?
It's unreal.
I just sometimes don't understand. Like, do fans not see the other records in the NHL?
Well,
like
I think there's that.
The Wild have points in 23 of 28 games.
I know. So
let's just enjoy it until the playoffs.
Right. So
and then you can get all uptight.
Well, and even then, it's bizarre to me how fast they go to negativity.
Mm-hmm.
So I have two thoughts on this. One is that all it takes sometimes is a bad period.
It's
and
crazy.
all of a sudden, the vitriol that I'll get thrown at me like, okay, Mr. Stat guy, because I'll mention that the Wild might have had more shots than the other team, but are down 1-0 after one, or something like that. And each time there's a little part of you that wants to, when they come from behind to win the game, go back to those tweets and say, well, I guess it worked out okay for them tonight. Like they must have been out too late last night in this play. They can't complete a pass. This guy sucks. That guy sucks. And the same thing would happen in previous years. They'd lose a game to a team below them in the standings. And I remember a couple times going and saying, okay, well, last night, Colorado lost at home to Chicago.
Well,
the
that's
night
what
before,
I was saying.
Florida lost to Philadelphia.
Yeah.
I mean, it
Dallas
happens.
just got their ass kicked by Chicago.
Right.
Winnipeg just lost to St. Louis and Columbus.
Right.
And because the Wild actually beat Utah, which
but had to go to shootout to do it.
Like, did they not understand?
Right.
Like, this is the National Hockey League. It's not played on a computer.
Right.
You're not going to win 6-0 every night if you're a superior
and the
team
best
to
team
another
doesn't
team.
go 82-0 and the next best 79-3. It just doesn't happen.
Like Clayton Keller is an elite goal scorer, especially from that spot on the power play. The fact that that he scored a couple goals last night, like this is an actual NHL star.
Right. I had a fan who, when Gustafsson allowed the fourth goal last night. Okay, we finally see the old Gus. The guy's leading the league in goals against and save percentage. I would agree that's a puck that he should have been able to hold, and I'll guarantee you he'd love to have it back. The guy's leading the league in goals against and save percentage.
Yeah.
He gave up a goofy one. So that, the old Gus is back? Come on. But the other part I was going to add to this is I have no idea what our...
you like how I turned this Vinny shot at me into a rant on the fans.
It wasn't even a shot at you. He was commenting. He was commenting as
it was like Kevin Fallness accidentally texted.
That's another story. We won't be having his thoughts on the show. But I have no idea what our TV ratings or anything are, our viewership numbers, but I usually can get a feel for how much people are following the team by how many times I get stopped to talk about the team.
Mm-hmm.
And that's at probably the highest level it's ever been. A little bit with social media interaction, but more like just the number of times I get stopped walking through grocery stores or malls or health clubs or with people wanting to talk about how much fun they're having watching this team is significant. And I love Wild fans. I love their passion, but my God, there are some that you just want, and there are some that I sometimes will resist the urge to go back to what they said earlier in the night, just to say, well, I guess this turned out to be not right. Like I think last night I posted a tweet at one point that just said, feels like a matter of time, because I thought the Wild were playing well. I like their game. It just feels like a matter of time, meaning like if they get one, they're going to get three because they've been all over them. And I can't remember what the response was, something like, typical Minnesota rose-colored glasses or something like that. And
I mean, just look at some of these records in the Eastern Conference.
Right, but I want to go back to the guy after the game and just say, well, it turned out to be exactly what did happen, bud. All right, let's go back to Vinny's thoughts. Rossi looks great. Any chatter on trade talks with him, or do you think he's getting closer to solidifying himself as a part of the future with the Wild?
Honestly, I can't answer that completely. I still am very skeptical. No conversations from what I have checked in on today have happened between Bill Guerin and his agent. And that concerns me because I just think it's getting more and more expensive, Rossi's going to want to stay here, but he's going to want to,
he's not going to stay here for nothing.
His agent is really, really, really good and really, really, really experienced. And a big NHLPA guy too, used to work for them. So he's going to this is not going to be easy now. And trust me, this agent is well aware of, because he talks to other GMs, that Rossi's name has been out there. And because of that, he's gonna make this difficult, I think. And so And maybe I'm not exactly explaining that the exact way. I just think, and everybody knows my thoughts on this because I've been a proponent of Rossi for a long time here. I just think he's done everything that he possibly done. He's turned into a clutch scorer for them. And he is real. And Danila Yurov is a figment of all of our imaginations. Right. And it's like they're just saying, well, Yurov. You got Rossi. Until you don't have Rossi, we don't know anything about Yurov.
Right. So I think there's that. To me, there's a couple things that jump out. One is that he is as consistent a producer as there is in this Wild lineup.
Yeah.
He's almost a point a game guy. 24 points now in 28 games, I think. So that's a pace for 70. The Wild have had like 10, maybe 10, and it's probably 7 guys because Kaprizov's done it 3 times. I think they've had like 10 70-point seasons in their history.
Yeah.
And so it's a long way to go to maintain this pace for the whole season, but there's that. Then I did look at him the other night. We had a graphic on the consistency of he, Boldy, Kaprizov, how seldom they've been shut out. Been scoreless in back-to-back games one time all year. And if you look at him compared to other teams' number 1 centers, in terms of even strength points, I think he's 12th in the league. Mm-hmm. So, and I mean, you're talking about there's a handful. There's the 7 or 8 that are absolutely superstars. He's nowhere close to those guys. But then you start to look and say, how many teams have a guy better than him as their number 1 center? So I think you're looking at a guy, and you talked about his clutch performances. When he gets a chance with the puck on his stick, he's been making plays that we haven't seen many centers make in Wild history. And I know that might sound like an exaggeration, but we haven't had very many centers that were drafted where he was that have those kind of skill sets. Mm-hmm. With his hands, with his ability to finish. And for whatever reason, he's always been looked at and talked about for what he's not doing instead of what he is doing.
Like other than Koivu and Eriksson Ek, name another center the Wild have produced that have drafted, developed, and produced. Because Granlund was really a right wing here.
Yeah.
And
I would say I'd
Bouchard
argue
was a right wing here, even though they're both like listed as centers. They were right wings.
But I'd even argue that Rossi's he's a totally different player than Mikko was. Mikko was I'm not saying Rossi's a better player than Mikko, but he's probably a more gifted natural scorer than Mikko was and a playmaker. And when you look at last night, puck on his stick, game on the line, he's cashing in. He's willing to go to the net. I got it. He's not the biggest, strongest, most rugged to play against guy, but you have that guy in Eriksson Ek if you have your lineup.
As Greg Cronin said in Anaheim, like he's strong on his skates. He wins battles. Look at just go to NHL.com/edge and just look at his high danger shots and chances and goals.
He's in the middle of more with the Wild than just about any player they have. The only guys they have with more points are Boldy and Rossi or Boldy and Kaprizov. I mean,
does he have more? Let's take a quick break and then we'll get to him.
Okay.
Hockey isn't the only thing happening on the ice, and as lakes are freezing over, it's time for ice fishing. OnX Fish offers the most comprehensive fishing tools for increasing your confidence and success on the hard water. Use the Fish app to find new places to fish and sort lakes by species, abundance, trophy, and keeper potential. OnX Fish also shows you hotspots, lake-by-lake regulations, and private and public land ownership information. For a limited time, download OnX Fish for free in Minnesota and Wisconsin, or go to onxmaps.com/fish to get more information on the app that is changing the game on ice.
Save smarter and grow your funds faster with a certificate from Royal Credit Union. Royal's 4.25% 9-month certificate has no minimum opening balance and a locked-in rate for a guaranteed return at maturity. Open a 4.25% APY 9-month certificate at any Royal office or online at rcu.org/certificate saver. Early withdrawal penalties could reduce earnings and principal. APY accurate as of 12/5/24, insured by NCUA.
Back here, Worst Seats in the House, Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta. December 17th is our next live show. It is freezing out, Anthony. And one thing that we haven't talked about is July 9th to the 17th. We are going to Madrid and Barcelona.
It's awesome. I can't wait. I've never been to Spain, so I'm really excited about it. It's not as hot as it was in Sicily. That we found out the average temp, according to Michael Kenny from Defined Destinations, who puts these together for us, does all the research. He says the average temp is 84.
Yeah.
So it should be perfect kind of weather.
So about 90 degrees hotter than today.
At least. But 20 degrees cooler than it was in Sicily.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's going to be great. We're staying in a couple of day trips mixed in, but I've heard so many great things about the food and the wine in Spain. I'm really excited about it. And I'm always excited for these trips. We've been able to see some of the most incredible places in Europe.
We got 3 nights in Madrid, 4 nights in Barcelona, including some day trips. Some unbelievable tours and experiences. It's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And so book it, come and join us. The groups that we've had that continue to come back, I know we've talked about it before, but the number of people that say, like, I've been to Europe a bunch of times, or I've traveled a bunch. Now that I've traveled with this group, I wouldn't do it any other way. We have a blast. There's a great group that tends to return year after year. We'll look forward to seeing all those people, but also some new fans with us. Come along. You'll have a blast, and you won't be disappointed with the time, with the tours, with the experiences, but also just some time to explore on your own, some time to hang around the table with us and listen to a couple different opinions on the hockey team in town.
Tons of great food, tapas and sangria tasting tour. There's going to be a flamenco show that we're going to too, Anthony. So maybe we'll Switzerland, we'll get you up there, like doing flamenco, like when you yodeled.
Oh, I yodeled. That's right.
Yeah.
I'm a yodeler.
Wow, we have sangria and tapas tour. I'm reading this right now. We have sangria and tapas tours in both Barcelona and Madrid. Obviously, we'll do all the Gaudi stuff. So really cool. This is going to be on defineddestinations.com either on Thursday or Friday. So go to that website and you can get all the pricing and all that. Everything's included. You could do the land or the airfare. Some people like to do their own airfare, like me. Things like that.
I just changed my screensaver today too to the shores of Sicily with my Peroni.
That's awesome.
Yep. I'm excited about it.
All right. So what more does...
we've got Vinny. He said he was going to, when we talked about it, he said he was going to have 4 or 5 thoughts. He had 6 this week. So he's got 3 left. Any blowback from the 4 nations, like players who got snubbed, any odd picks or players who didn't get selected that either of us noticed?
Well, I think Clayton Keller was letting Bill Guerin know last night that he should have been on the team. I mean, Tage Thompson, Cole Caulfield, John Carlson, those were the biggest U.S. guys. To me, the Canadians, I thought it was weird that Mark Scheifele didn't make it. I
didn't even look at the Canadian roster. But let's go back to the U.S. for a minute, because I think it's always easy to look at guys and say, well, he should be there. Okay, but then who do you take off?
Exactly.
So I think Clayton Keller's a good player.
Yep.
But and
Jack Hughes, they have Matt Boldy.
Right. They have guys like that. Same with Cole Caulfield. Is he better than one of those guys? No. And he plays kind of the same role. Tage Thompson, having a good player, great player, having a good year. Should he be on there? Well, who does he replace? Because some of the guys, I think that people would immediately, the knee-jerk reaction would be some of the older, like bottom of the lineup guys.
Trocheck, Brock Nelson.
But those guys are going to be your shutdown line, your penalty kill guys, your key face-off guys. That's not who Clayton Keller is. That's not who Cole Caulfield is. That's really not who Tage Thompson is. So I think you really would have to do a deep dive into the way the roster and the lineup is built to say that. I don't think there was a guy that I looked at and said, I would take this guy over a guy they picked to play the exact same role on the team.
Yeah.
For the U.S. at least.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree. I'm just saying the names of the snubs.
Right.
Tage is the one that I would have loved to have seen him maybe over a Trocheck or something. And I love Trocheck, but Trocheck has not been good this year.
He hasn't had a
that
great
freaking
year,
team is a train wreck, by the way.
They're a mess.
You know who really stinks is that Mika Zibanejad. Oh my God. It's just beyond belief.
But how fast that team came unraveled.
It's crazy.
Last year I thought they were the team. That was a team I picked to come out of the East last year.
Yeah.
And this year they look like an absolute mess.
Yeah, it is truly unreal. Charlie Strammel's in town to play the Gophers on Friday and Saturday. Talk about the portal. You and I discussed the portal and how we didn't love it over the summer and maybe back in the springtime when we saw hundreds of players on there and NIL stuff. Sometimes the portal works, and it wasn't working out for this kid at Wisconsin. Now he's the number 1 center on the number 1 team in college hockey. He's got 11 points. Has a huge goal at Wisconsin the other night. On the ice in overtime, which didn't happen at Wisconsin, and he assists on the overtime winner.
But
it just seems like he's got a coach in Adam Nightingale who's really supporting him right now.
But he's an example of spots where I would allow the portal, because he went to Wisconsin, recruited by a different coaching staff. They changed coaches. To me, when you change coaches, the door should then be open for players to. This isn't who you signed up. This isn't the program into which you signed up to play.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where it should be an allowance to say, okay, they changed coaches. That's on them. If you want to now leave and go somewhere else, if you want to go with the coach that recruited you to his last spot, like any of the guys at Mankato should have been free to follow to Wisconsin when the coaching change happened. But I think that I think it's a joke is college football season ends, and as soon as these teams play, their team isn't even in a bowl game yet, and they're announcing that next year they're going to go play somewhere else. And I
can't wait. So, I mean, if you believe these reports, Bill Belichick's going to coach North Carolina. I can't wait till he deals with the portal.
He deals with that.
Holy
right.
crap!
And it's like free agency, I suppose. It's like he got all these guys under 1-year contracts, but now where it used to be, coach build the program and you buy in or you don't play, guys would usually buy in. And by the time they're done, they'd get their chance to play. Now, all of a sudden I was watching a game the other day, one of the conference championship games. And it was like when NFL teams come out and they say, this guy was from this school, when they're introducing the starting lineup, it's like, this guy played last year here, played last year there. There were like 6 guys. I think it was SMU. I think they had 6 or 7 guys on one side of the ball that had played somewhere else the year before.
Yeah,
and that's not college football.
It's weird. It's bizarre. So looking forward to watching Stram. I'll go to that Friday game. They play, I think, around the same time on Saturday, or I'll be writing during the Saturday game. This is a crazy homestand coming up for the Wild. I mean, 3-4. Couple afternoon games, and with Vegas and Flyers, right, on Saturday, Sunday, and then obviously the Oilers on Thursday. That'll be a tough game. I mean, team landed at 3 a.m., so we'll see how that all works out. Couple Twitter questions. Dasani asks, realistically, how do you fix the penalty kill at this point? What do you think? 2 goalies?
Well, as I said earlier, I think get the guys back. So and then take a look at it, but I don't know. I don't have the answer. I'm far from what I'd call an X's and O's expert when it comes to penalty kills, but I think you have to evaluate it when you have all the guys in there for a couple weeks. But
they should take Wes Walz and Ryan Carter and put them on the ice for a couple practices. I mean, or bring them into the room and like 2 of the elite penalty killers this organization's ever had. Ask what they say.
I mean, I think it's at this point, if it were me, I mean, I'm not, as a coaching staff, I'm not saying, hey, go get the TV guy in here, but anything right now would be open for right. Yeah, but anything right now would be open for discussion. If when you get all those guys back, it still looks like this, because I do think there are times with penalty kills where the stats can be misleading. The overall percentage can be misleading because sometimes you get in that rut where you kill the first minute 40 and then all of a sudden there's one bad bounce, and some years those bad bounces just all seem to find the back of the net. And I do think there's been a little bit of that with the Wild this year.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And, but again, I was being a little tongue in cheek in Wes Walz and Ryan Carter. Although maybe Wes should have a little beer with the coaching staff and just, this is what I see. Charming Chad. Do we expect Kaprizov's negotiation to be as contentious as the last one? I really don't think so. Don't you think? Kaprizov, this is a different situation, man. This guy just loves playing here. He's producing here. He's showing he doesn't need Zuccarello. He's not dependent completely on Zuccarello, which I think, like, that to me is the most uplifting part of this. Because I think because their contracts end at the same time, I think you always worry just in the back of Kaprizov's mind, well, Zucchi's leaving, and he's the guy that always gets me the puck. But the one thing that he's shown is he could play with anybody, and he doesn't need somebody to put that puck on a platter for him. He turns.
He's
like
a playmaker
last night,
this year.
Yes, so
he's a playmaker. But I also think it's the way he's played with other guys within games, where John Hines will throw him out there for a shift with the fourth line. Not all superstars embrace that.
Yes,
and he seems to just love playing with whoever's on the ice with him.
Yep. Derek asked, how close is Zuccarello to returning? So John said last night, although John will maybe get a better idea tomorrow, because I think John was having a little trying to remember all the injury updates after a game. I probably picked the wrong time to ask him. But he said that he believes Zuccarello and Brodin were back here skating, and that all three were progressing, including Eriksson Ek. So that doesn't mean that they're back imminently. Like Zuccarello hasn't played since November 14th. Obviously, Eriksson Ek has a significant lower body injury, and Brodin's got a significant upper body injury, so we'll have to see how that continues to be good. David Juracek was sent down to the minors. This was the plan all along, as we talked about in the last couple podcasts. And what they decided to do is, instead of starting him in Iowa, just at least call him up for the road trip, have him get to know the coaches, practice with the team, how things are conducted, get to know his teammates, and now he's going to go to Iowa, and I think they'd like to keep him there for a little while, Anthony.
Yeah, he needs to play for sure, but gets a little taste of what the organization's all about, gets a feel for the systems, gets a feel for the terminology, but also just the way they run things, just the way practices are run, what the coaches expect from him. And here's a couple things we want you to go down there and work on. And now I think it'll be really interesting, because I think we talked on the show before, there were several coaching staffs in Columbus that all reached the same conclusion, like that this guy wasn't ready to play in the NHL, and he didn't seem happy with it this year, clearly. So now, do you embrace this when you go down there? And so many times we've seen guys that when they get sent down, go down there and be great, work on this. Here's what you need to add to your game or tweak or improve so that you're ready the next time you come up. And then the next time you come up, do you look different? And we've seen guys who have done it. We've seen guys who have gone down there and dominated. We've also seen guys who have gone down there and gone through the motions because they were pissed off that they were back in the American League. So it'll be interesting to see how he handles it. My guess would be,
to me, by the way, as you just said, that is another example of the professionalism and maturity of Marco Rossi. Because while everybody up here was always freaking out that he was down here, he never was,
Right.
It's pretty impressive.
And he went down there and just put his head down, went to work. And then when the season ended, said, I know this is what I got to do this summer to change this.
Yeah.
And so I think this would probably be a spot where I would expect that that's exactly what would happen. You got a guy that a trade always has to open your eyes. Like, all right, I got a fresh start here. I got a chance to, if anybody thought it was on me in the last place, here's where I can change it. Here's what I have to do to change it. I didn't get a chance to talk to him a ton while he was here, but we'll see. I think this will be really telling if he goes down there and starts to excel and is able to come back then and say, all right, they asked me to work on this. I did it, and now I look different when I get back.
Right. Lucas Lawrence asks a couple more for you, then we'll wrap up. If the Canucks are not in playoff position at the trade deadline, do you see Billy going after Brock Besser? The one thing,
this could be the 50th time on this show we've had somebody ask us.
Well, between Brock Besser and Brock Nelson, 50, it might be 100. And this is not just this year. This is like 25
That's what I'm saying,
years.
for the last 10 years.
Now we're going to add Brock Nelson to it, and I think it's more Nelson than Besser. Just real quick, just to make it, the one thing the Wild have to do, if they're going to add anybody, is get out of LTIR. If they're in LTIR, they cannot add anybody. It's that simple. They got to start accruing space again. And this is, as long as they're in LTIR, they're going to eat into the space that they accrued at the start of the season. I think their goal is to go after Nelson. That's my personal opinion. I don't think the Canucks are going to fall out. Do you?
No, I don't. And I actually think Nelson is such a better fit for what this team needs than Besser anyway. But that's just, we're talking hypotheticals here. I have no idea if a deal could be made or if the contracts could fit, salary could fit, anything.
Yep. Jimmy asks, the visiting locker room in Utah actually looked decent, which it absolutely was. Which arena has the worst visitor locker room? We haven't been there yet this season, and it was supposed to be renovated, so I don't know if it was, because I've been saying it for years, but Carolina, hands down, is the worst visitors locker room. San Jose is close. Carolina's got the goalies are in a different room. They got the partition in between.
That's right. That is bad. Nashville's not great either, if I remember. Well,
no, Nashville's pretty big. Nashville's fine. Most arenas are great right now. Winnipeg's tight. San Jose is very tight and weird because the goalies don't face they're facing like a wall. Then That's about it. Anaheim used to be horrible. They've totally renovated it. St. Louis used to be horrible. It's still not great. Some are really, really good. All right, here, last question. Russo creating his arena list before the Utah game got me thinking. What's Russo and LaPanta's pre- and post-game work routine? Seems to me that there would be more pre-game work for LaPanta and more post-game work for Russo, but please elaborate. All right, don't stress me out with that question. More pre-game work for LaPanta.
Oh, I for sure have more work before the game, but after the game, I have. I mean,
what do you think I'm doing before the game? You think I'm just sitting twiddling my thumbs, or am I working on 15 other stories and talking to people?
Well, I'm sure.
Anthony,
I know it. Nobody has any idea how tough it is to be Russo.
I got 17 stories I'm working on right now.
But for the actual game itself, after a game, my prep starts for the next game already. Now, not in this case because the next game's on national TV, but when a game ends, I have zero left to do regarding the game that just happened where, you're working for a couple hours. But I spend probably more time at the rink. I know I spend more time at the rink than any other play-by-play guy just because when I get there, I know the booth next to me is empty. So it's the game day prep is long. And for me, it starts the night before, the day before, because I put a file together that I send to our crew, update it in the morning. We're prepping there. I do then escape to go to the gym for a couple hours, but then I'm back to the rink and I'm back in the booth by 3:30 every afternoon for a 7:00 start and to get my game prep done. So I'd say before the game, there's a ton of prep before the game, but when the game ends, I do a post-game hit and I'm on my way out of the building, and that game, there's not another thought
on to
given
Kowalski's. Yeah, and by the way, when you were talking about guys in the minors, one guy I did want to mention, I'll be really interested to see when Liam Ogren comes back up. What does he look like? Because he is on fire right now in the minors. This is great for him to be down there. Yep. 8 goals in his last 10 games.
I love the fact that they're letting him just go down there and stay. There's nothing wrong. Remember Matt Boldy for half a season? They left him down there. And this was when Kevin Fiala, if you remember, was up here playing with just about everybody. They were trying anybody on that line to try to get Fiala going. And I remember Dean continuing to say that, we keep telling him, Boldy's the guy who's going to be on your line. He's going to, and then it was about January when he came up. And then from there on, he was great. But they didn't rush it. They let him stay down there for half a season, even though there were so many times where you'd look and say, well, he's the obvious choice to be the other winger on this line. And Billy was determined he's just fine down there. And I think right now, it's great that they're letting Ogren. Now, I'm not saying he has to be down there a half a season because right now with the injuries they have,
I'd love
they
to
could
see him
use
back.
a top 6 forward. But I love the fact
that if he comes up and plays in a top 6 role, show us you were a top 6 forward. To your point,
all the time. Yep, you get the opportunity, you better grab it.
And I like the Wilds. I like Bill Guerin's rationale of having guys in the minors for a while. And as much criticism as the Wild got for having keeping Rossi down there and not playing Rossi in the playoffs and all that stuff, it's worked. It got through to Rossi. He dominated down there. He was the best rookie scorer in Iowa history. He comes up. Now he looks like a player because he got the message. He learned down there, and now he was able to step in, which is why, again, Bill Guerin needs to look at, I did that. So now pay him his money and keep him in this organization. It would be such a shame if the Wild developed this kid and watched him freaking excel somewhere else. That is my final thought of this podcast. December 17th is our
I'm
next.
glad it was Billy Guerin that got your blood boiling, not me.
December 17th, our next live show, 7 p.m. at Splitrocks. July 9th to the 17th, Barcelona and Madrid will be doing a live show as well. So
in Spanish.
Yeah, in Spanish. Are you learning Spanish? You learned Italian for that trip.
I actually have a little Spanish. I took some Spanish in college, so I'll have to polish it up. But it's been a while. But I actually have a little background in Spanish where I had nothing in Italian.
Well, thanks for joining us in the Aquarius Home Services studio. Thanks to our longest sponsor, Aquarius Home Services, your local authorized dealer for Connecticut water treatment systems, heating, cooling, plumbing, everything, electrical needs. Go to Aquarius Home Services. Twill in the Edina Galleria. Royal Credit Union, and OnX Maps. Thanks, everybody.
So much coming out, there's nothing going in. I know that you feel like you're never gonna win. Oh, but the world